how do we convince customers, specifically convincing hyperscalers to give up on self-construction? So I'm guessing your company builds data centers, and you probably find a lot of hyperscalers that want to build their own data centers, and you want to convince them that it's a much better idea to engage your company. Very similar to the question that I just answered. A lot of that is being able to use content resources, being able to position yourself as the go-to experts on data center construction, be able to, and long before they even know that your company exists, long before they even know that your category exists, getting to the first early signs that there's going to be a data center construction project. And this is where fleshing out the buyer personas for individual roles is incredibly important. But even before you get to deciding who your primary persona is, who your secondary persona is, if there's a tertiary persona, you're going to need to define the kind of companies that you want to target, your ideal client profile, your ICP. This will have a geographic component to it. Are you looking to build data centers worldwide? Or are you only building data centers in certain countries, or a specific country or a specific region with that company and within that country? So that's important. At a geographic level, size-wise, are there certain smaller hyperscalers versus larger hyperscalers are a good fit for you? For example, is your company really resourced to be able to sell directly to Google or AWS or Microsoft? Or are you going to do much better with a hyperscaler that's got a few dozen or a few hundred employees? Because again, like, you don't need tens of thousands of employees to be in the hyperscale business. In other words, you don't need tens of thousands of employees to do that. So again, pick your battles in terms of geography, in terms of company size. Are there certain business models based on regulatory factors or industries that could be a better fit than others? And then once you've defined at the company level what you're trying to do, you carve out who you're trying to build relationships with in those particular companies, the buyer personas, and then your buyer personas will help inform what the conversations that are going on in each of those stakeholders' minds that you want to be able to address with your educational content, with your events. Just to clarify, when I say events, this doesn't necessarily have to be webinars or live streams. It could be offline versions of that. A lot of companies do really, really well hosting their own educational events, their own symposiums, or much more casual things like breakfast seminars or lunch and learns. If you have your own facility with a conference room that sits 10 or 20 people, it's shockingly inexpensive to host your own educational, like, lunch and learn or breakfast seminar series on a regular basis. The key thing is to deliver a lot of value. So they're learning something, they're networking with some interesting people, and they want to be able to attend and want to keep bringing their coworkers and their boss and everything back. So just like with all of your content and events experiences, the goal is to make it so good, so remarkable, that they can't help about remarking about what you're doing to others that are part of that decision committee. So when it comes to convincing customers and convincing hyperscalers to give up on self-construction, get in early, get in often, be seen as the go-to experts on constructing hyperscale facilities with a great podcast, great webinars, great videos, great downloadable tools, great interactive tools, great ways to be able to show the insights and the level at which your team is able to operate and add value to those particular clients.